Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Number to call the program, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840 if you would like to join the conversation. While you're calling in, 888-589-8840 is the number. I want to finish up some of my thoughts on the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. And simply put, what the Employment Non-Discrimination Act would do would be to completely shred the First Amendment. I mean, the First Amendment, when it applies to Christians running a business, would be gone. It would be meaningless. It would be completely shredded. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Now, you understand the basic thing that's going on here is that this bill, ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, would provide special legal protections for those people who engage in what we have always called in Western jurisprudence the infamous crime against nature. They would be given special legal protections under this bill. Now, you begin to think about what would happen now because it includes gender identity. So if you have a guy that thinks he's a girl, now you can't discriminate against him in the marketplace. So you got a job opening. Let's say you're running a Christian bookstore. Let's say you're running a trucking business. Let's say you're running a daycare center. Let's say you're running Hobby Lobby. Let's say you're running Chick-fil-A, and let's say you're running the American Family Association, because they claim it's got religious protections in there, but very flimsy, and I don't think it would, I think it'd be like a sheet of paper against a charging bull. So you advertise a position. A transvestite walks into the lobby of the American Family Association. I want a job here. I see you're applying for such and such. I want to put an application in for that job. AFA would not be able to tell him, well, no, I'm afraid we're not going to have a spot for you because we believe in biblical view of human sexuality. AFA would get sued. AFA would get put out of business. Chick-fil-A put out of business. A guy walks into a Chick-fil-A store, wants to be a cashier. He's wearing a mini skirt and leather boots and earrings and lipstick and rouge. He wants a job as a cashier. Chick-fil-A says, no, I'm sorry, no, you can't discriminate against me on the basis of your dress code. This is who I am. Takes Chick-fil-A to court. So now and this happened to American Eagle. I mean, American Eagle had somebody, I think it was a cross-dresser. And American Eagle is not a Christian-run business. There's not any part of American Eagle, it's a clothing store, that is conservative or Christian at all. They just have a dress code. They got sued by somebody who wanted to cross-dress on the job, and they lost. American Eagle lost. So this would enshrine this across the country in every business. And I think what you'd have, because of the way that the gay lobby works, you'd have people that would deliberately go into values-run businesses like Hobby Lobby, like Chick-fil-A, and they would deliberately apply for a job knowing that they're going to get turned down just so they could sue on the basis of the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. That would be a virtual certainty. And if you think that wouldn't happen, then I would suggest that means you are clueless about how mean, aggressive, and vindictive the homosexual lobby can be. We've already seen these stories. Number to call, by the way, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. We've seen these stories about photographers that have been fined by the government of New Mexico. We've seen these bakers in Colorado that are being taken to court by the government of Colorado. We've seen the baker in Oregon because they wouldn't render services to same-sex ceremonies. They've been fined. They've been prosecuted. They've been threatened with jail time. The labor commissioner in Oregon said these people need to be rehabilitated. We don't want to put them out of business, but we got to send them to a re-education camp. We can't have people thinking like this in the state of Oregon. So you think about this happening in isolated instances right now, but what's happening to Christian photographers, what's happening to Christian bakers, what's happening to Christian florists would be routine. This would be like giving a baseball bat to bullies, to heterophobic, Christophobic bullies, handing them a baseball bat with directions to the shops that they can go in and start trashing the place. Now you think about the First Amendment liberties that Christian businessmen now enjoy that would be shredded. They would be gone. You'd be left with nothing but confetti from the First Amendment. Christian business owner would have no right to the free exercise of his religion. Remember, that's what the First Amendment protects, is not just freedom to believe what you want, but the freedom to exercise your belief, to build a business and run a business according to your most deeply held religious principles. That's the free exercise of religion. That's gone. Poof. In just a bonfire of hateful bigotry. Free speech, that's gone. I mean, if a business owner even expresses his values when it comes to personnel decisions, they're going to strap him to the rack. What about freedom of the press? That's gone. He can't even write a letter to the editor explaining the standards he's going to operate by, or he'd get hauled into court. Writes a letter to the editor, that could be the end of his business. Freedom of association, that's a First Amendment right. That's the freedom that business owners enjoy to select a workforce of their choosing that represents their values and will put those values into practice. That is gone with the wind of intolerance. He is going to be forced to hire people that do not represent the values he wants his company to embody. What about petitioning the government for the redress of grievances? That's gone, because he is going to be presumed guilty because he holds to such antiquated and out-of-date ideals. So you can begin to see the threat to freedom and liberty that's represented here in the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, or ENDA. Now, what's even worse about this is that, and I am not exaggerating this, ladies and gentlemen, what is particularly dangerous about ENDA is that if this thing passes, it very well could make it illegal for any business anywhere to fire a pedophile. This would be the Jerry Sandusky Protection Act. This would protect guys like Jerry Sandusky from being fired in the workplace. Now, the reason I say that, this law uses the word sexual orientation. You can't fire somebody based on sexual orientation. You can't even include sexual orientation criteria in your hiring practices. It can't factor anywhere in the deal whatsoever. Well, if that's going to be the standard, sexual orientation, then we've got to know what sexual orientations are, which ones count, which ones don't. Somebody's got to define sexual orientations for us. And in America right now, that's the American Psychiatric Association, the APA. They produce this thing called the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual of Mental Disorders, or something like that. But it's the Bible of the therapeutic profession. I mean, it's a monster thing. It's thick. It's hundreds of pages thick, and it's considered the most authoritative source of kind of psychiatric analysis and rubrics and standards and all that kind of thing. Well, in the current edition, the DSM-5, they update this thing every 10 years. In the latest edition, in the print edition, they identify pedophilia as a sexual orientation, not a sexual disorder, not a mental disorder, but as a sexual orientation, just like homosexuality is a sexual orientation, just like lesbianism is a sexual orientation. So essentially what they've done is they have normalized pedophilia. They're saying, we think homosexuality is normal. We think lesbianism is normal. Now we think pedophilia is just as normal as they are. It is a sexual orientation, just like lesbianism and homosexuality are. Now, we called them on this. AFA broke this story. Sandy Rios issued a statement last Thursday exposing what the American Psychiatric Association had done here. And initially, they denied it. We even got criticized in the Christian press for fear-mongering. And then the APA had to issue a statement. Look, we were wrong. We got to make a correction here. We shouldn't have used the word sexual orientation. Now, realize they spent 10 years on this thing. This thing has been in the works for 10 years. You cannot tell me when you're dealing with sexuality, you're dealing with pedophilia. That's the most watched part of that manual. I mean, that gets the most scrutiny of anything that they do. You cannot tell me that somehow accidentally the word orientation just slipped in there. Whoops, there it is. Who knew? It wasn't like that. Couldn't possibly be. That was intentional. I believe they were hoping to slip it in there. They were hoping in some way or another it would escape detection, and then there it would become official. Now, they've issued a correction, said, no, we were wrong. We should have said sexual interest. Now, once again, that's different than disorder. Sexual interest. I mean, you can be interested in a lot of things. You can be interested in collecting butterflies. You can be interested in rocks. You can be interested in golf. I mean, interest is a very neutral term. So they're using a very soft term to describe this sexual interest in children, calling it a sexual interest. To me, that's not much better than orientation. But here's the point. They've issued this correction, and they're going to correct it in their online editions, but it's still in print. And they've said, look, we're going to make corrections in the print editions. The next edition that we print is going to have that correction in it. But as far as the average guy out there, the average psychiatrist pulling this thing off the shelf to research pedophilia, it says it is an orientation just like homosexuality. So realize what this means. If that becomes a sexual orientation, and that's where they're going, I mean, that's been progressive over the last 3 editions of the DSM. They've gone from calling this thing a disorder to saying it's only a disorder if it bothers you. If it doesn't bother you to be a pedophile, then it's not a disorder. To now they're saying it's just an orientation, very neutral, and ought to be accepted and embraced just like homosexuality. So realize what this means. If this becomes accepted as a sexual orientation, then somebody could show up at your kid's daycare, some teacher could show up at your kid's elementary school, be a crossing guard, be a playground supervisor, be a classroom teacher, be a daycare giver, who tells you, look, I have a sexual interest in young children. I've never acted on it. I haven't done anything with it, but I fantasize about having sex with children all the time. I would like a job in your daycare center. If you turned him down, you would be hauled into court and you could lose your business. Children you couldn't turn down a teacher in an elementary school. Your children would be placed at enormous risk. Vote no on ENDA, no on cloture, on ENDA. The number to call your senator, 202-224-3121. Back after the news. Stay with us.
American Family Radio.
AFR Talk.